This is the future of Africa. In this program, we focus on Horn of Africa's political, economic, and socio-cultural aspects. Let's share our vision, hopes, and professional critics. All views are stemmed. Stay with us. Mr. Yared, welcome to this program.
Thank you, Dr. Hussein.
Mr. Yared has a Bachelor of Arts degree in Political Sciences and International Relations. He has a Masters of Arts in International Management, and he is a Juris Doctor of Law. In terms of work experience, he served as a diplomat as well as technical trainer and consultant. Currently, he is self-employed, an active Oromo community involver, and he is closely working or following the Oromo context or politics overall. Once again, Mr. Yared, welcome to this program.
Thank you for having me.
We'll be discussing a lot of things, Yared. We'll be discussing on issues of Finfinnee, Ethiopia and the Ethiopianization, and then the peace process, as well as other related issues. And we'll start our discussion by focusing on Finfinnee. From your experience, why do you think that the Oromos are highly interested over Finfinnee?
Oromos have an interest in Finfinnee, but I will not characterize it as having highly. It's just a natural interest. Finfinnee is a capital of Ethiopia. It's a financial and political capital. It's also the capital of OROMIA. And by virtue of its geography and historical connection, Oromos have a natural claim to ownership of the city. Of course, the population, the demographic content of the city is not fully Oromo. There are people who have come to the city from other parts of Ethiopia, and the influx of people have started since the 1890s, and prior to 1890s, Oromos were virtually the exclusive residents of the region. But since the seat of the government moved to Finfinnee, people have come in search of opportunities. And particularly after World War II, a lot of people have come to the city, and it has changed the democratic composition of the city. But this change in demography composition has affected the Oromos. Oromos have been, legally excluded from having representation. The city has been very unwelcoming to Oromos, and Oromos of the surrounding areas have been dislocated. So the Oromos interest is, or can be stated as one, protecting Oromo families and farms around the city from the unending and illegal expansion of the city. And two, Oromos have an interest to synchronize policies of education, transport, economic development, and other policies with that of Oromia. But it should be noted that the ownership claim of Oromos is not a claim of exclusive residency or exclusive dominion over the city affairs. Or it's not also a demand for preferential treatment other than what's equitable. Okay? As such, and then the ownership claim of the Oromos does not affect the democratic rights of or civil liberties of residents of the city. All right. So the demand for ownership is based on a demand for equality, moral equality or equity. I think this is basically the interest of Oromos, to have ownership so that the city will welcomes Oromos, and Oromos relation with the organic relation between Oromos and the Oromia region and the city continues uninterrupted, and services and people will move freely, and the boundary between Finfinnee and the rest of Oromia will be virtually absent.
Thanks so much. As you said, Finfinnee is the capital city of Ethiopia, the federal government. It's the seat of African Union. It's the seat of a number of international organizations. At the same time, the city serves as the capital city of Oromia, and the interest, the claim of Oromos over a long period of time is the ownership. And Oromos claim that Finfinnee belongs to Oromo and Oromia. That does not mean others have no equal right in all aspects. They do have equal right, but the key aspect is Finfinnee is being a land of Oromo, and it's a center of Oromia. It's not actually just part of Oromia, it is the center of Oromia, and that's why the farmers who were really pushed out from that area still claims and suffering hard time. And you are right in saying that, but let me go deep into the current situation. If this is the case, why do you think that the current turmoil, the current turbulences are happening in relation to Finfinnee in terms of politics?
Well, there's no question that the recent inclusion of the Oromo language as a subject in the curriculum of the city schools has ruffled the feathers of some groups. As you know, in the 1950s and 60s, the Oromo language has been banned as a medium of communication. Now it has been recognized since the early 1990s, and the devil tongue, as they used to call it, is have done a comeback. So naturally, this creates an uncomfortable situation for some. So once the institutional racism is being attacked, now it has morphed itself into an urban snobbery. Anything Oromo is viewed with contempt and a degree of hatred. One thing is for sure, it's not uncommon to see controversies centering around national symbols. Even here in the US, American athletes, protest against, American national anthem. In the case of Finfinnee, however, the protest against rituals of Oromo patriotic communion is not against a dominant or an oppressive system. It is rather a prejudice against Oromos. As you know, or it is our lived experience, that Oromos have faced a collection of negative attitudes and judgments for a long time, since I was a kid. Social insults and everything else. What's different this time is these young school-age kids have been affected by the legacy of those past prejudices. See, this prejudice is the kids are affected. The hate that you see in these kids is a product of socialization from their parents, from classmates, from churches and probably mosques, congregations, from songs, so-called patriotic songs, social media, and other parts of the culture. So, and then here's another thing. So the turmoil that you see in connection with the hoisting of the Oromo national flag and the singing of the national anthem is also that other groups, other political actors want to use or to capitalize on this issue. Currently, in Finfinnee, there is high degree of unemployment. There's high rate of inflation, and poverty is really high. People are struggling. The cost of living is high. So people have anxiety. So these unscrupulous political actors, they want to reorganize and redirect the people's anxiety against the Oromos by using this pretext. So these political actors are trying to challenge the constitutional order. Most of these people, they oppose multiculturalism. They oppose the federal arrangement. They oppose, in a sense, equality. This is how I see the current, turmoil or the current, uneasiness in Addis Ababa regarding Oromo national flag and Oromo national anthem.
Thanks so much. I think issues related to flag and anthem and so on are just symptoms. The real problem is, as you said, is from those people who really stand against the constitution of the nation, actually, and those who like to promote the imperial time and before. So these things are, you see, it's like using a cover, and the true essence is standing against the basic fundamental questions of the Oromo people. And as we know, one of the fundamental questions of the Oromo people is about Finfinnee and its ownership. With that remark, I would like to go deep into the political turbulences that Ethiopia has gone through in its entire life. Given your experience as a diplomat and your publications, what do you think are the fundamental causes, or if not causes, fundamental reasons or factors for political turbulence over years? You can tell us your analysis in terms of economy, politics, and what have you.
Yeah. Before I, try to answer, this question, I would like to go back and, add one more comment regarding, the situation in Finfinnee. So as I said, or as you know, most of the influx into Finfinnee from other parts of the empire happened after World War II. So since then, people have been living, and now there are generations of people who have lived in Finfinnee from other parts. So these people have not directly participated in the operation of Oromos. So for them, the Oromo question or the Oromo desire or the Oromo claim of ownership is an abstract. As such, they don't have compassion for Oromo issues. so they don't stand with Oromos in solidarity to solve the current problem. So there is a need to educate residents of Finfinnee that the Oromo question is a question of equity, it's a moral equality. The Oromo question is not a threat to the residents of Addis Ababa. The Oromo as a republic, as a Gada republic, has no interest in violating the civil rights of any resident. Sure. After saying this, to address the main reason for the continuous in this endless human suffering and political problem in Ethiopia, I believe the cause is that the Ethiopian state itself suffers from continuous justification crisis. So given that there are varieties of people in Ethiopia and varieties of nationalism in Ethiopia and varieties of interests in Ethiopia, the prescription of one language, one ideology, one sovereignty has not produced the desired result. So Ethiopia's continued existence is only justified or is as strong as the program and the murderous campaign of its government against the people. So that's why I say that since the time of its establishment in the 1890s up to the present, Ethiopia is suffering a justification crisis for its existence.
What does that mean? Can you explain more?
Okay. So in French, they call it raison d'etre, like a state should exist for a reason. Mm-hmm. And so, like if you come to the US, they have constitution and they have democracy. So the constitution outlines that the government's role is to protect the civil liberties of its citizens. So the state exists for that purpose. And the government carries is given power limited by the constitution to carry out those functions. In the Ethiopian case, we have different civilizations and different peoples. And so far, in political philosophy, there is nothing that can bring together these that stand above nationalistic ideologies and bring people together. When this happens, especially after the fall of communism, 1989 to 1982, countries have resorted to things. One, they will separate, or two, they use force to suppress such claims. Ethiopia is using, even today as we speak, force to justify its existence or to suppress challenge to its existence. That's what I mean by justification crisis. By the way, this is not the first time. Oromos have fought against incorporation in Ethiopia. The Wolaitas have fought against incorporation in Ethiopia. During World War II, Oromos have declared independence from Ethiopia. The Somalis are fighting for independence from Ethiopia. Eritrea has seceded from Ethiopia. So the challenge has been continuous. That's what I mean by, look at the recent war against the Tigray. It's a challenge against the state. Look at the Oromo Liberation Army. It's a challenge against the state. So what I'm saying is Ethiopia is suffering from this continuous justification crisis. All people have not accepted, okay, the state. Oromos and others believe that they can thrive in a different political arrangement than the present one.
Thanks so much. Can you capitalize on that by looking at the perhaps political developments and economic developments over years, if you like, and you can add the narrations that the country has been in over years, perhaps starting from the old days.
Okay. Well, the first justification that was employed was the Solomonic myth of exogenous legitimacy. So these, some interested Ethiopian historians have produced this long national history for Ethiopia, beginning with the myth of, or the legend of, the visit of Queen Sheba to King Solomon.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So they depicted Ethiopia as having this, as having existed, as having been born in primeval time and continued through history changeless, as a changeless entity. In addition to this, these historians have taken unrelated, unconnected events and political entities, okay, and welded them into a national narrative of 3,000 years. The reason they did that was under the assumption that the longer Ethiopia the longer Ethiopia's past is, the more it is perceived or envisioned as having continued existence far into the future. So that's why some people say Ethiopia is sacred because it has long existed for long and it cannot be dismantled now. Okay, it's of course, as you know, like as an Oromo myself, and many in the South do not buy this myth. In addition, the others also, the other historians, in order to have this coherent narrative of Ethiopia's existence for 3,000 years, they have to define which people will not be part of it. That's why they created or fabricated the story of Oromo migration from Madagascar. It's false, it's historically inaccurate, it's politically motivated. Of course, Oromos Oromos and others have found no use for this myth. There is no use for this myth. Oromos have no interest in this abstract time unconnected to their existence. So this is part of the reason that in 1974 there was a revolution which ended this mythology and challenged the Ethiopian state.
You see a clear pattern, say, before 1974, where the nation was under empire kind of thing, and then from 1974 to 1991, a kind of military socialist-oriented government, and then the TPLF. You see the pattern. Can you say something on that?
Sure. So in the 1960s, particularly in the 1960s, as I said earlier, this mythology has been challenged by the Oromos when they declared independence after World War II. The establishment of Menchat Ulama organization is also not a direct challenge, but a challenge nonetheless to this mythology. But as time goes on, this characterization of Ethiopia and the kings having linked to or being descendants of Menelik the First, it became anachronistic. So, the first person to officially, at least as it is recorded, the first person to challenge this, monarchical mythology was the Honorable Ibsa Gutama, who asked the question,
Ethiopia.
Who is an Ethiopian? Exactly.
Yeah.
You can just wonder his political genius. Wow. It's a fundamental question. Who is an Ethiopian? It is not only who is an Ethiopian, what's Ethiopia, right? So President Mengistu Haile Mariam, who was the president of Ethiopia itself, tried to answer to that question, not directly, not personally to Obo or Ibsa Gutama, but to address the issue because he knew that it was a challenge. And I quote, he said, "For us, Ethiopia is not an identity or name of a country. Ethiopia is a very beautiful young and virgin mother whose love one cannot get enough of." He personified Ethiopia. So you have Mother Ethiopia, Ethiopia first, Ethiopia or death, all those motto. Something related to the definition of Ethiopia, Dr. Abiy recently said, "While alive, we are Ethiopians. Upon death, we become Ethiopia." And I'm sure you remember Obo Lama Magarsa, the respectable Obo Magarsa also said, Ethiopia is like an addiction. So these attempts to define Ethiopia do not or have not provided a coherent ideological basis to justify Ethiopia. Of course, for a short while, they have aroused passions, Ethiopia or death, okay, including the support Dr. Abiy has been getting for a while. But the Mother Ethiopia characterization was challenged. Okay, as a result, Eritrea seceded, and President Mengistu went into exile. Okay, Dr. Abiy's definition seems to have lost its currency at this moment, especially when you look at what's going on in Tigray and Oromia. So the next logical question is, so do you kill Ethiopians to create Ethiopia, or do you have Ethiopia to make the living conditions of Ethiopians better. So that challenge is still there. It has not been answered, satisfactorily. So the challenge continues. So this, the Derg, similar, a little bit with the nuanced variations under Dr. Abiy. Okay, there was also like the economic.
Before you go into the economic aspect of it, in fact, Oromos, we don't have something wrong with the country Ethiopia. The claim of Oromos is like a kind of imposed Ethiopianism or Ethiopia, like having one language, one flag, one culture, one religion, and so on. This is at the hub of the Oromos question or interest. So the idea is we don't like Ethiopianism, which is imposed. Nobody gives you that color. Nobody rejects and nobody provides being an Ethiopian. We believe that we belong to that, but it's not the kind of Ethiopia we tend to envision, and Oromos are really questioning this for that matter. As you have already started, can we have some kind of trend in terms of economy in relation to Ethiopianism?
I'm not sure if I understood your question. I'm sorry, if you can repeat the question.
I mean, you have tried to explain in terms of politics, right? And you started to talk about the economy. So I'm giving you a chance to describe the pattern in terms of economy.
Oh, sure. Okay. Just to make just one comment regarding what you just said.
Yep.
Again, the question for Oromos and for all Ethiopians, for Tigrayans, for Amaras, for Somalis and Benishanguls and the Gambelas and the Walaitas is, what's Ethiopia? What's Ethiopia? That's the question. Who's an Ethiopian? So before you define who's an Ethiopian, you have to define what's Ethiopia. Ethiopia has become, the concept itself. The definition or the meaning of Ethiopia is in the eye of the beholder. Anybody can define it in any way they want. But there is no consensus about what Ethiopia is. Ethiopia, the country, which Mengistu Haile Mariam, rejects. Okay, it's a country. So we need to distinguish between a country, the state, and the government. The country is everything in it. It's neutral. Okay, it's the birds, the lions, the humans, the fields, the weather. Everything is a country. So nobody objects to the country. Okay, the state is the abstraction denoting the government, the people, and the territory. And the government is the one who preserves the state and who executes or exercises power over the people and the territory. In most of Ethiopia's history, the government and the state are one. I can quote Mr. Abiy at this point. Dr. Abiy said in one of his public speeches, Ethiopia and I are two sides of the same coin. You cannot separate us. Okay? So when you challenge Dr. Abiy, you are challenging Ethiopia. This has been the case all along. When you challenge Haile Selassie, you're challenging Ethiopia. When you challenge Mengistu Haile Mariam, you're challenging Ethiopia. when you challenge Prime Minister Meles Zenawi, you are challenging Ethiopia. So I contend that there is no universally accepted definition of Ethiopia.
I got it.
And in connection with this, which we should talk about this point is Ethiopia has been an empire from its beginning, 1890s to 1974. After that, you have other leaders up to the President, Dr. Abiy. All these men, okay, all these executives, chief executives, have been strong men. Their power has never been limited constitutionally. Or even if the constitution puts a limit on their power, in practical terms, they were doing anything and everything they wanted personally. As such, it's very difficult to argue that Ethiopia has become a republic, because one of the hallmarks of a republic is to have a limit, a constitutional limit on the power of the executive. So for all practical purposes, Ethiopia today, despite having the formal name of republic, is an empire of discontent at that. So after saying this, let me go to the economistic paradigm, the justification for Ethiopia in terms of economy. This is mostly done or primarily done by or during the EPRDF government. The EPRDF was saying that if we provide democracy, if we provide federalism, if we provide respect for civil liberties, it should be enough. Has it been enough? The answer is no. Why is it no? We can see the outcome of that justification. The outcome was that thousands of Oromos were imprisoned, tortured, exiled. Hundreds of thousands of Oromos were dispossessed and dislocated. There was war against the Oromos. And Ethiopia has not achieved the economic justice as claimed. Of course, there were growth in many areas in terms of infrastructure development, in terms of literacy, in terms of access to health and stuff like that. But in the end, it was challenged. And the challenge came because there were simultaneously growing nationalisms. As I said earlier, when you have competing nationalisms in one empire, the regular liberal republicanism is not sufficient. That's why it was challenged. Of course, the state has not collapsed. There was a change of government. That ideology is gone. So again, the state has not provided the necessary political goods, okay, that will convince Ethiopians to believe that or to remain loyal to the state. So that's why you see the continuing conflict in different parts of the country.
Thank you. As opposed to the narrations, for example, if you refer to Adwa, Karamara, every move in that country, there are claims that as if one group stood against that, but as you have clearly indicated in terms of politics and the economy, that country was actually the result of the contribution of nations and nationalities. Do you have some analysis in this regard in your research or in the pattern of your work so far?
Sure. For a long time, Adwa has been promoted or presented as a symbol of Ethiopia's nationhood. That Ethiopia is justified in its existence because the people have been mobilized together for the same national project. It's not unusual for governments to create these big projects to create that sense of national unity. With regard to Adwa, there is no question that the battle had tremendous ramifications both within Ethiopia and beyond. In Ethiopia, it heralded the birth of a new nation. Prior to the Adwa, Emperor Menelik had not gone all the way down south, southwest, and southeast. It's after the conclusion of Adwa that bolstered his stature and also his capability to go south. Ethiopia has also become a symbol of, independence for Black people across the world. Okay, so the Battle of Adwa, the importance of the Battle of Adwa cannot be, overestimated. But in the wake of the battle, right? In the wake of the victory, the Emperor Menelik and his generals have gone south and committed genocidal wars against the people. But for pro-Ethiopian historians, or those historians who would like to justify Ethiopia as an eternal nation, they provide the evidence of, Oromos, Amaras, Agaws, Tigres, Walaitas, and maybe a couple of other ethnic groups having fought against the Italians together is a symbol of national unity and a symbol of, being one people. Do Ethiopians believe that's true? Are the people in Ethiopia one group? It's the lived experiences, the political interactions, developmental patterns, the persecutions, the sufferings, the stratification of ethnicities. Does it show that Ethiopia is one ethno-national group?
What does your research indicate?
The answer is no. That's why we have the Tigrans fighting. Mm-hmm. That's why you have the Oromos fighting. That's why you have the Somalis fighting. This is not an abstraction. This is the reality on the ground. So people are challenging. That's why it's, you have a continuous challenge to Ethiopia. So these various, attempts to justify Ethiopia's existence, okay, have served purposes, okay, for some time, each time. The Solomonic myth has served for some time. The Adwa has served for some time. The economistic paradigm has served for some time. Okay, Ethiopia, the mother, has served for some time. But look at Ethiopia today. Ask the Tigrayans. Ask the Oromos. So what this tells you is that democracy has not served Ethiopia, will not answer Ethiopia's question. Economic justice, assuming that it can be achieved, will not answer Ethiopia's question. Individual rights will not answer Ethiopia's question because it will freeze the current inequalities, the current marginalizations, the current stratification in place. So what do Ethiopia need? Ethiopia, if it is to exist as a state, needs a new justification. A new justification of pluralism, plural sovereignty, plural ideologies, plural religion, okay, and plural institutions. Some argue that federalism will provide these answers. For Oromos, maybe for the Tigrayans, or for many others, the question is, has federalism answered the question? That's the question that we are.
Thank you for that deep analysis. I think we did dive into a deep ocean, and we need to discuss more. I'm interested in some of the issues you raised. For instance, how Mengistu Haile Mariam did define Ethiopia. I don't have that kind of information for that matter, and we need to look at what is meant by motherland for Mengistu Haile Mariam and fatherland for Oromos and so on. We'll have some time in the future to discuss, and this is a very deep topic, so we can't finish in one discussion. Let me get out of this and maybe get your reflection in relation to what's going on in Ethiopia now currently. There is a peace agreement between TDF and the Ethiopian government, and as you know, there are a lot of turbulences in Oromia, and the tendency is like solving problems through war and through force, as you said, as you have indicated clearly. Do you have any reflection on this, and what should happen in reality? For me, like what has been done for the northern part, could have been the right path for Oromia to secure peace in the entire nation. Otherwise, solving part of the problem and mistreating the other part could result in more danger in that country. That's my own reflection. How do you see this?
You see, the war in Tigray, it can be argued that it has many goals. Yeah. It's a legal operation. It is a challenge to Dr. Abiy's government. It is a fight between the Amaras and the Tigrayans. It is it's part of the territorial nationalism of the Amharas. it can be, viewed or analyzed in different, contexts or perspectives. But if history is any indication, there has been similar wars in other parts of the world. One is in the Civil War in the US. As you know, before 1865, in the United States, the Constitution allowed states to secede. But President Abraham Lincoln had a different, idea. He didn't care about democracy, and he didn't care about people's sovereignty. He had information that the United States population will grow, and by, in 50 years' time, America will be, if you combine all the states together and expand it, America will be a great power. And as a result, he waged a war against the South, quelled the rebellion, and he said that America from now on is one nation, indivisible. And, afterwards, America has achieved all this, international power. But one should be clear here. We should be clear here. America have exterminated a people and imported as slaves millions from Africa. Now, let's come to the Ethiopian side. Had Dr. Abiy succeeded in this war against the Tigrayans, given his prior statements, I would argue that his interest was to create one nation, indivisible. But that war has not succeeded or ended in the same way as the American war had ended, 1865. As a result, at least legally, okay, and based on the agreement between Dr. Abiy and TPLF or the Tigrayan government, the Ethiopian constitution remains intact. That means the states or the nations and nationalities still have the right to self-determination. Okay. In that sense, the status quo is intact. When it comes to the Oromo case, the reason that, if I understand your question, the reason that the Ethiopian government or Dr. Abiy's government is not interested in having a peace talk with the Oromo Liberation Army, for me, I cannot give you like a rational answer. For the normal human being, it doesn't make sense, especially given that Dr. Abiy is Oromo and the Oromo Liberation Army is Oromo. One would think that they will have found common ground by now. So why is this intransigence against the Oromo Liberation Army? If you see history again, the Dirk, even Haile Selassie, from Haile Selassie on, right? The Oromo issue has always been kept in the dark. So one reason that I can think of why the Ethiopian government doesn't want to negotiate with the Oromo Liberation Front Liberation Army is they don't want the Oromo issue to have international recognition. Second, I would say is the most formidable challenge to the Ethiopian state comes from the Oromos. Oromo is a people who have the geography, the demography, and the history, okay, to have their own republic, a viable republic. Therefore, the Ethiopian state is fighting an instinctual war against the Oromos for survival. And then you might have this personality, factors, thrown into it. People, they know each other. It's possible, but this is my take on it.
Thank you so much. Had it been for not for the time restriction, we could have discussed a lot, and we're running out of time. And if you have some final remark, particularly your advice to the Oromo people, perhaps you will have a split of second, please.
Well, it's not a thought, but just one observation is the Oromo Liberation Army are sons of Oromia, and the war against them is a war against Oromos. You can argue that these people, the leadership in Oromo Liberation Front, have a passion for excellence. They want to be leaders. They want to have power. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. I also see that the people fighting for Oromia, the Oromo Liberation Army, they have a passion for compassion for the Oromo people. If I were to meet, Dr. Abiy or Field Marshal Jula, I would tell them, these are Oromos. We can solve the Oromo issue, by sitting around the table. And there is no need for continued bloodshed in Oromia. And it's very saddening what's happening in Wallaga. The use of drones, the mobilization of battalions, the death of mothers and kids. In addition to that, innocent people from the Amara, from Oromo, from various groups. This should end.
Thank you, Yared. With this, we conclude our discussion today with Mr. Yared on the current political situations of Ethiopia and Oromia. For those of you who would like to share your vision, hopes, and professional critics, the door is open. Please contact me. My name is Hussein Kadir. See you next time. Thanks so much, Mr. Yared.
Thank you, Dr. Hussein.
This is the future of Africa. In this program, we focus on Horn of Africa's political, economic, and socio-cultural aspects. Let's share our vision, hopes, and professional critics. All views are esteemed. Stay with us.